All right. Thank you everyone for joining. I just started the recording, so we'll be able to share this video later on. Wanted to welcome everyone. We're going to be talking about one of the modules in Windchill called Supplier Management. I'll just do a quick intro about Elite, and then we will get into it and show you what supplier management looks like in Windchill. So just very quickly, Elite is a PTC partner, also a manufacturer. So we use Windchill in our factory, and we can use that experience to help you with your use of PLM. So as a PTC partner, we support all the PTC tools. You can see them listed here and provide all the services to go with it. So if you ever need help with designing your system, setting it up, configuring, adding modules, and making sure that you get the most out of it, we are here to help. So again, thanks for joining today. We'll jump right into it and we'll pass it off to Cody, who will be giving us the presentation as we look at what you can do with supplier management to manage AMLs and AVLs in Windchill.
All right, thank you very much, Stuart. I'll go ahead and share my screen here. That should be coming through momentarily for everyone. So nice to be here with everyone today. My name is Cody Wiltrout, and I'm an application engineer here with PTC. I focus mainly in our CAD and PLM tools, and I'm going to be taking you all through an overview of Windchill Supplier Management, or SUMA, today. So starting off with why you might be interested in this and some of the challenges that we really try to address with this tool is that often there is a large market demand. You have shorter market windows, and more than ever, we have differentiated products where you need to differentiate your products to stand out in that marketplace. But at the same time, you always have those cost pressures to try to reduce supply chain spending and make things a little bit more cheaply. And with that supply chain, it is larger than ever, seeing as we now live in a global community where you can get things from all kinds of suppliers and vendors. And so it can be very complicated and complex to try to manage that network of the supply chain while reducing your costs and still increasing your differentiation from other products. And the implications from some of those challenges is that you can have increasing costs and delays because you can't identify the preferred components or who a preferred supplier might be. You have supplier proliferation as well as part proliferation, making it even more difficult as you move down the line to identify those parts again or reuse them. And that means you're going to have minimal supply chain buying. You're not going to know what all you're getting from one particular supplier or vendor or manufacturer, and that means it's going to be hard for you to buy in bulk and be able to get the best value that you can for those, as well as, again, using labor hours and really trying to identify which ones you should be using or creating duplicates of those parts. The solution that PTC comes to with this is our supplier management for Windchill. This allows you to do things like see a multi-dimensional BOM. Those of you who are used to working with WT parts, you've seen that we can connect in information to them. Now you can do things like connect in the supplier or vendor information and see what all is going on inside of any given bill of materials and what you're purchasing and possibly who you're purchasing from. This is also going to extend further in your searching capabilities by being able to search on statuses such as approved or preferred for your vendors or manufacturers, and give you the out-of-the-box reporting to be able to run quick reports and review what's going on. This also gives you digital traceability so that you can see everything that you're getting from some vendor or supplier and be able to start looking at making those bulk purchases, see everything and how it relates and connects inside of your bills and how it's being pushed up and downstream, really creating that digital traceability end to end so that you can make better informed decisions and make things a repeatable process. With that, then you can manage those supplier sourcing options and preferences. So you can not only set someone to approve, but pick who you would want the preferred one to be if there's a best option out of the options that you have, as well as be able to then reuse those preferred suppliers during design work. Again, really further down the line, helping to optimize around being able to do that single purchase or bulk purchases, as well as making sure that you're not recreating parts that already exist inside of the system, and standardize the introduction and disqualification processes so that you have control on them and that you're making sure that's a repeatable process with checks and balances there. So with that, we'll go ahead and jump over to Windchill so you can all see how that's going to actually work inside of the system here. So in my Windchill screen here, we're going to start with doing a search, and I'm going to use a classification search for anyone who's not used to using classifications. This is just going to allow us to look quickly at some type of electronic that we're interested in. In our case, maybe capacitors for today. So we don't make capacitors, but we do use them in our products, so that's something we're going to be purchasing. Well, when I do this search, as I mentioned in the PowerPoint, I can now filter down based on whether or not something is approved or preferred for any of these capacitors. If we look at the approved list, we can see the sourcing status here showing you that all of these are approved. And if I click on one of them with the I button, I can go into the AML AVL tab here and look at that information. So here we can see that we have a manufacturer that is approved, Murata Electronics, and with that then, any information that we'd want about them. Now, I do want to note that even with some of the traditional Windchill capabilities, this does give you even really more insight and further capability, such as the Where Used tab. Now I can see everywhere that this purchased capacitor would be used inside of my system. And if we are going to switch vendors or manufacturers, I can see what impact that might have downstream and just be aware of anything that that's going to affect before I make any of those decisions. And of course, again, because you can add in an introduction process and have reviewers involved in that, you can make sure that this is a step in that process so that there aren't any unintended consequences when you do something like that. Coming back to our search here, we'll take a look at a different capacitor that has more than one manufacturer that we can choose between. So if we come to the AML AVL tab again, in this case we have the TDK Corporation as well as Microchip Technology. At the bottom, we have a list of our changes. So any updates that you're going to be making between who is approved or who is preferred or setting something to do not use, it will keep a history of that so that you can always come back and look through that process to see how you got to where you are currently. If I'm interested in any single one of these companies as well, I could click on their manufacturer name and it will take me to their tab inside of Windchill. So under manufacturing objects, we have the TDK Corporation, and we can see all of the parts that they supply to us. Again, this is where you can start to get into being able to look at which companies you are purchasing a lot from, which companies maybe you're not getting as much from, and start to consolidate and figure out what your best path forward would be. But this is again going to give you that visibility for any decisions you're going to be making with changes with them as well. From the design perspective as well, this information will push downstream into things like the bill of materials so that you can make informed decisions, whether that be adding a new component in or just looking at where your current bill is at. Here we can see we have sourcing statuses as well as cost statuses. So if you want to bring in cost statuses as well, you can set something like that up and see what is approved to actually be purchased currently, get an idea of what objects you're still going to need to get price stats on to be approved for purchase. If we bring down the view and show AML AVL, under this we can see all of our manufacturing parts here, and you can see that you can have more than one under each of these individual components that we have in our Beagle board. And that's going to allow us again to quickly see which options we want to be picking from and maybe which ones we don't have any listed for. From a quick glance, I can then see we still need to find a manufacturer or a vendor that can supply certain capacitors or certain parts and make sure that we finish that bill. Going on from that, of course, you can do those reports like you would normally with your bill of materials, but in this case, it's going to include that AML AVL data. So if you needed to send this off to someone in purchasing, for example, you could easily run this, even do filters again by maybe who's the preferred or approved, and then share that with whoever would need to review it. One last note as well with this that's nice is that you can set different views based around where you're at. So if you have different vendors or different suppliers that you're getting something from in North America versus in maybe Europe, then you can set views of this bill so that you can see based off of what plant location you have, where maybe you might want to be purchasing things from, or what manufacturers you might be using. And of course, you can always go back in between any of those views or have them set based off of user roles to be able to identify those. Along with being able to set that information inside of your bill of materials and make those informed design decisions, you can also do reviews of this type of information. So you can always do a comparison of your part structure to see what has changed between different versions of your designs, which is always useful for just identifying what has happened from one version or a baseline to your latest working version. But what's nice now with the AML AVL data is that we can also choose to set it as a preference, or in our case, as our only preference that we're interested in looking at. And now we can compare our 1.3 version with our 1.4 version, specifically looking at whether or not there has been any changes to any of that type of information. It's going to generate up 2 side-by-side bills for us here. And inside of that, then any blue highlighting is showing that we have a difference from one version to the next. This symbol showing that there's a child difference here under this part. And if we look under that capacitor, then in this case, we can see that we've had an addition for who our manufacturer is for this capacitor. In the past, we did not yet have one assigned. Of course, if you change from one vendor to another or one manufacturer to another, it will highlight that for you as well. So with the supplier management, then you can really bring that supplier and vendor information and make it part of your overall design process, really allow your users to reutilize this information and make more informed decisions and make it a repeatable standard part of the process that you include to make sure that it's going to be done correctly every time. So that's really what I wanted to show inside of Windchill for supplier management, but just to touch and close off here with a few other points. Just to make sure that this is clear for everyone, the way that this works is that you now get some new types of parts essentially inside of Windchill. So we're all used to working with the WT part, but under that then you can get manufacturers and vendors. So under the internal part, you can have the gold gear, which is going to represent that manufacturing part. And under manufacturing parts, you can have multiple vendor parts as well if you have multiple vendors that supply parts from that manufacturer, or you can go directly from the internal part to the vendor parts as well if you just care about who the vendor is that you're going to be getting it from. And again, the key differentiator there being with the manufacturer, it contains kind of the who is making this part versus with the vendor list, where can I buy this part from? And that's going to give you full control then to be able to control both manufacturers and vendors and run all of that introduction as well as controls for what users are going to be doing with that data. What this really brings you is allowing you to save some costs by identifying duplicate parts. Again, searching a little bit more quickly, making sure that you can identify if that part already exists inside of the system and being able to find it so that you're not going out and recreating it yourself, as well as being able to identify who your preferred suppliers are and making sure that you're using the correct or best option, not just the one that an individual user might know. And this means that you can reduce your supplier component inventory costs by not getting inventory from multiple different places and possibly having overlap and again duplicates even in your warehouse. All of that means that then you can work a little bit faster, be a little bit more efficient, and reduce your time to market and reduce your supply chain complexity, which is, again, in a growing world where you can have a lot of different vendors or manufacturers, really useful in making sure that you can try to streamline some of that process. And then reduce your dependencies on supplier-specific drawings and allow you to have more freedom and flexibility in who or where you want to be going to, and make sure that everyone internally knows where they should be going to as well. So that's really what I wanted to cover today for our brief overview on supplier management inside of Windchill. If there's any questions, I'd be happy to answer any of them, and if not, I will pass it back to you, Stuart.
Thank you very much, Cody. We'll give everyone just a moment to see if there are any questions, but I think it was pretty straightforward and well explained, so we certainly appreciate that. I think everyone can see how it would be beneficial, and hopefully we'll be able to take advantage of it. Well, if anyone does have any questions, please feel free to reach out, and hopefully you'll join us in future webinars as well. Thank you, Cody, for the presentation. Thanks, everyone, for joining.
Absolutely. Have a good day, everyone.